This video provides 3 examples of how students use vocabulary in different ways during science talk. Though tools and tasks are both important to help students get talking, this video is focused on ways teachers can be responsive to students' language. The aim of listening to student talk is not to fix or correct, but rather to press students to think deeply about science concepts. They may not use the correct science terms or give textbook answers, but that is not the point of this kind of talk. Through students' use of language, teachers can find out what students are thinking about and attending to. At the beginning of this physics unit on force and motion, the teacher engaged students in 2 observational tasks to elicit their thinking about what forces influence motion. First, she had students drag wooden blocks across different carpet samples to feel the differences and begin to explain what would cause the need for different amounts of pulling force. In today's lesson, students observed 2 teachers rollerblading in the hallway. Pairing these 2 tasks together helps focus students on the contact between surfaces. In this next clip, the teacher directs students' attention to particular aspects of rollerblading motion: how the rollerbladers start, how they glide, and stop as they skate around the hallway.
What I want you to pay attention to about our rollerbladers is you've started to get some ideas about speed and velocity and acceleration. I'm not going to have you measure anything, I just want you to use your eyes and look at them skating. But here's what I want you to pay attention to and take notes about. How do they get started when you don't have to write them down, these are all on the sheet. Okay. So just listen for right now. So how do they get started? Like when you're standing there on your skates, how do you get yourself moving? How do they speed up a little bit? How do they just coast? How do they just stand there and roll for a while? And then how do they stop without running into a wall? Hopefully.
I might be doing a lot of that today.
So how do our skaters get moving? How do they stay moving? And then how do they slow themselves down enough to be able to stop without crashing?
Before the lesson, the teacher primed herself to listen for central ideas from the unit. She also has specific questions in mind to ask students in order to hear what they think about these central concepts. Often in traditional science classrooms, one-word vocabulary answers typically suffice. However, a one-word answer doesn't tell us much about what the student understands about friction or momentum, for example. They may have a sense of what the words should be used for, but are unsure about exactly what they mean. Or they may be throwing out a science word hoping to hide from further scrutiny. When students use these buzzwords, it's helpful to press students to describe more about what they mean. They are continually adding to their own personal definitions of science words they hear in class. Therefore, if a student uses a science word, like momentum, it's important to hear just what the student means by it. In this next clip, the teacher presses a student about the term momentum he uses to describe the skater stopping.
Can I hear some of your ideas?
Well, when he stops, he makes a T and he grabs his skate.
Like this?
Kind of.
Yeah, like this. So he loses momentum and...
Why does he make a T?
So he... Because the
Like
T
he
has to
acts
drag
like a
the
brake.
Yeah, it drags along the ground and come back. When it drags...
Come here, bro. Make a path, guys.
When he drags along the back, it acts like brakes.
It acts like brakes. Can you say more about acting like brakes? Like, what does that mean?
Like the wheels kind of drag on the ground because it's going.
Okay, so I heard dragging and that the wheels aren't rolling anymore, and then I heard something about momentum. Clayton, can you tell me your momentum idea? Or whoever's idea it was? Samson's idea. Tell me about momentum. What do you mean by momentum? I don't know that word.
That's fast.
He loses like more power.
So he loses more power, like more, when you say power, do you mean like just how strong he's going forward? Okay.
And then we'll use...
In the previous clip, the student uses the science vocabulary word momentum, and the teacher pressed him to say more. In this next clip, a group of students uses the word tension instead of friction. They continue using the word tension to describe the effects of skating on different surfaces. Notice how the teacher appropriates the student's word of tension as she focuses on exploring their conceptual understanding rather than fixing their language.
If she was work is good because it's just kind of flow and it's like.
Yeah, like how we're doing the carpet, it's hard to move like when you have like a
tension's
really
getting caught.
rough surface like the tension, but then like now she's only rolling on like a flat surface like on the table. It's smoother and like easier to move.
So then, would ice be even easier to
No, it'd be
rollerblade on?
harder.
It'll be harder.
No, but
Why?
like...
Because they'd
It's
have
like-
like little cracks.
Yeah.
Little crack. Wait, tell me more about the cracks.
Like, cause like cracks, you can like get caught more easily there.
In the ice?
No, like not in the
No,
ice,
because
like,
they
but,
have
like
those machines that smooth out the ice.
okay, so like the ice is smooth out, but it's not technically like I feel like the wood is gonna be better.
But if you're doing it on those, but like there's like certain things that are made to go on ice. Those aren't made to go on ice.
Why not? Why wouldn't they work?
Because they're roller blades.
Yeah, but why?
They're blades. Like they're.
Oh,
God, put your physics brain in. Why wouldn't they work?
That's wheels and like if you have a roller blade or like I don't know what's called roller blade, ice blade.
Ice skates?
Ice skates, yeah, ice skates. Like do you have that sharp thing?
Yeah.
Like to get through the like the ice and get yourself moving, and they use like the ground to get yourself moving. But then like if you're using the ice, it could be like even more slippery, and there's like not like you can't get that like tension and stuff.
Oh, so
you
like
can
no
stay.
tension with the ice?
Yeah.
So like how she's
wheels.
pushing a
Those are
little
just-
bit,
yeah.
you're saying that there would be no tension on
But
the
that
ice?
blade is like made like so you
For
can
the
like
wood.
for the ice.
Oh, for the ice. Yeah.
Students may invent words to label parts of the model that other students take up and use. These become commonly shared terms that kids can use to communicate productively. In this next clip, the teacher talks about how she attended to students' vocabulary throughout the lesson and how she plans to use what they've told her in future lessons.
Instead of thinking of the word friction, there was a group of girls that kept talking about tension, like the tension between the brick and the carpet. And so I didn't replace the word with friction yet. I'm just
You're waiting
I just like
for that.
yeah, I just use their word of tension, but I can tell that the concept is there, that they have this idea of, and a lot of kids also represented like a grabbing between the carpet and the block. You know, it's not going to take too much to like leverage that this grabbing into a more standard way of talking about friction. And same thing with the girls that are using the word tension. Like it's not going to be too hard to move that language into being friction. You know,
Well,
it's the
look-
same concept. So I think that they're getting it. And then the other really fruitful thing that I heard, like sort of raw idea, was one young man, Jael, started labeling the skaters as having two different kinds of feet, that one was a gliding foot and one was a pushing foot.
I
And-
remember hearing him talk about that.
And that, not only was that, you know, interesting for Jael to think with, but all the kids from that section picked up that language too.
Right.
And they started referring to the feet as the gliding foot and the pushing foot. And that was really important because I heard them, like that made them so that they could parse the movement into two different kinds of movement, that the gliding foot has one kind of motion that happens as a result of the pushing foot.
So you talked about that you were not going to try to bring in academic language at that point. So why did you not think, I'm going to talk about friction, I'm going to replace their language with the language of friction?
Well, I guess that at this stage, it's more that I'm trying to get what their idea is on the table, and I don't care necessarily like if they're using standard ways of talking about the idea. So I was listening more for like, does anybody have any really sort of tangential ideas that I'm gonna have to pay attention to? And I didn't hear too many like off-base ideas. Like these students seem to have made pretty good sense of forces in motion. They just don't have like physics ways of talking about them. So right now it was more like that I was listening to the idea of tension and trying to hear like, do they have some odd ideas about friction? But I don't think they do. I think they just have a different word for what they're saying. And so later on I will replace that word, but right now I don't need to replace the word because my objective was to hear what their idea was, like what was their model.
Attending to how students use language gives teachers insight into students' current level of understanding of science concepts and provides feedback to the teacher as to how to proceed in the unit. This video described 3 ways students typically use vocabulary in science class. Sometimes students use science vocabulary words when answering teachers' questions, By asking, "What do you mean by momentum?" for example, the teacher gets at what they mean by the term rather than making assumptions about student understanding. Students explain their thinking but use a substitute word. Depending on when this happens in a unit, the teacher will choose to appropriate and use the substitute word temporarily, then later in the unit she introduces the science term to give them the language to label the concept they already understand. Finally, students may invent words or terms to facilitate communication. In this example, the use of terms gliding foot and pushing foot clearly indicated which foot students were observing and commenting on to have a focused discussion.